Welcome to the Woodward Shoutouts Deep Dive Podcast, where we dive into the stories that shape our town and its past. Today's episode is based on the article, Bootleggers and Backrooms, Woodward's Wild Prohibition Past. We're going to step behind the facade of early 20th century Woodward into secret speakeasies, hidden stills, lawmen on the edge, and a community that operated in the shadows.
Yeah, it's easy to think of Prohibition as just this big national thing, right? But you really miss the local flavor, the real drama, if you do that. So our mission today is to focus right in on Woodward. We want to understand how this huge legal change total prohibition really smashed up against the way people actually lived here. We're looking at how the community, well, how it adapted, how it resisted, just to keep things flowing.
Okay, let's set the scene first. Because to understand the clash, you need to know what Woodward was like before Prohibition hit. And the sources, they paint this picture of a really wide-open town, almost frontier-like, even in the early 20th century.
Oh, absolutely. The numbers themselves are pretty stark. Think about this. 23 saloons. 23.
And 15 brothels. In a town this size, that's a lot.
It really is. It tells you right away that alcohol and everything that went with it wasn't just some minor part of life. It was central to the economy, to how people socialized.
Yeah. The article even throws out that line about having enough late-night shenanigans to make even Dodge City blush. Which gives you a sense of the energy, maybe.
Exactly. And the stark contrast, too. You had that scene, and then, well, if you weren't part of that, you were probably in church. It was a town of, let's say, vivid extremes.
So into this very established, very wet culture comes statehood. And Oklahoma does things differently, doesn't it?
It really does. This wasn't a situation where, the state debated it for years and then voted it in. No. Prohibition was, as the source says, baked right into the Constitution from the moment Oklahoma became a state in 1907.
Wow. So no transition period, no local option. Just, boom, illegal overnight.
Pretty much. A brand new state law, mandatory dryness, landing squarely on a town whose social and, frankly, economic lifeblood was largely alcohol. It set up an instant, massive conflict.
So how did Woodward react? Protests? Riots?
Not exactly. It seems the reaction was more subtle, almost passive resistance. The article uses this great phrase, the law was treated like an out-of-towner asking for directions, smiled at, then politely ignored.
Huh. So a collective shrug, basically. That's a nice law you have there.
Kind of. It
Yeah.
suggests this immediate, widespread understanding that, well, maybe those rules didn't really apply here. A local decision, you could say.
Okay, so the law is technically in place, but nobody's really paying attention. How does that work practically? What happens to those 23 saloons?
Right. They couldn't just keep their doors open. That's where the adaptation comes in. They didn't vanish, not at all. They just got sneakier.
They went underground.
Yeah.
Literally in some cases, but also metaphorically.
So we're talking speakeasies, hidden doors, passwords, that whole scene. Exactly that. Getting a drink suddenly became this little ritual. You needed to know someone, knock on the right door, maybe whisper a password. It wasn't casual anymore.
It adds a layer of, secrecy and maybe even thrill to it, doesn't it?
It does, and trust becomes paramount. Who do you let in? Who knows the password? And inside, you needed cover stories. The classic one, mentioned in the article, is drinking whiskey for medicinal purposes. Wink, wink.
Right. Just clearing my throat, officer. Everyone's in on the joke.
Pretty much the whole community understood the code. It's fascinating how businesses adapted, too. They couldn't just be illegal bars 24/7.
So they live double lives.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Take the Dewdrop Inn, which the article mentions. By day, it had to look respectable. An upstanding establishment, right? Keep up appearances for anyone who might be watching.
But then the sun goes down.
And it transforms. Backrooms open up, the real drinks start flowing, it becomes a speakeasy. That kind of duality, that takes serious effort.
And serious community buy-in, I imagine. You can't pull that off if people are reporting you left and right.
Exactly. The article talks about the collective deceit needed. It wasn't just the owners and bartenders. Patrons needed an excuse, too. If someone official-looking wandered in, what were you doing there? The standard line was, I'm just here for the music.
Even if there wasn't any music.
Sometimes, especially if there wasn't any music, it was the accepted alibi. Everyone knew what it meant.
It paints a picture of a town almost conspiring together against this outside law.
I think that's a fair way to put it. It wasn't just a few rogue operators. It feels like a societal complicity, maybe driven by economics, maybe distrust of the new state government telling them what to do. Whatever the reason, the community collectively decided the law wasn't legitimate here, and that decision basically propped up the whole underground system.
Which brings us to enforcement, or maybe the lack thereof.
Well, yeah. If the community is basically united in ignoring the law, enforcing it becomes tricky. The sources mention the Prohibition agents were overworked, and that's probably true. But it seems like more than just being outnumbered.
They could never really keep up, could they?
It seems not. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't always want to. There's this great analogy in the article. It says enforcement looked a lot like hide and seek, except the seekers never really wanted to win.
Ooh, that's telling. So not just ineffective, but maybe intentionally ineffective.
It certainly implies that, doesn't it? It points towards a lack of real commitment, maybe even turning a blind eye.
Does it get into why? Was it just easier? Or was there, actual corruption, local lawmen looking the other way for a cut, or just because they knew everyone?
The source suggests that looking the other way was pretty common. Think about it. If the whole local autonomy, or a big chunk of it, relies on this illegal trade, and the local police, the town leaders, are part of that community, what's the incentive to really crack down hard, disrupt everything, upset your neighbors?
Yeah, politically and socially, it's easier to just not see it.
Right. So the lines get blurred. Law versus local custom versus legend. And it seems Woodward didn't have, like, a big Al Capone figure making national news.
But the local stories were still wild.
Oh, yeah. The article says they were richer than a barrel of bonded bourbon, full of colorful characters, shootouts, sneaky backroom deals, clever escapes from the law.
The kind of stuff that becomes local folklore.
Exactly. These stories cemented that kind of anti-authoritarian make-do culture. The party didn't stop. It just got more interesting, more legendary.
And this went on for a while, even after Prohibition ended nationally.
That's another fascinating point. National prohibition ends in 1933, but Woodward apparently held on to its bootlegging ways longer than most.
Yeah.
Oklahoma itself stayed dry legally for much longer, of course, until 1959.
So even when the federal pressure was off, the local habits, the local system persisted. Why?
Well, partly because state law was still in effect, but also maybe that underground system just became normal, too embedded. Once you build that whole infrastructure, the secret suppliers, the hidden spots, the community understanding, you don't just flip a switch and go back overnight, even if some laws changed.
The habits were too ingrained.
Precisely. And it speaks to that larger idea, right? You can pass a law, outlaw the bottle, as the source says, but controlling actual human behavior, the culture, the economic realities on the ground, that's much harder. You can't just bottle up human nature or legislate away the thirst or the systems people create to satisfy it.
So Woodward's story during this time isn't just about breaking the law. It's really a case study in how a community adapts, resists, and kind of creates its own rules when faced with a top-down mandate it doesn't accept.
I think that's a great way to summarize it. It's about resilience, ingenuity, even if it was, illegal ingenuity. Widespread complicity and cleverness kept the town's social fabric and its preferred beverages intact.
It definitely reveals something about the town's identity, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows that sometimes history isn't just made by the laws on the books. It's made by the quiet agreements, the things people collectively decide not to see, the ways they work around the rules. That adaptability, that willingness to bend the rules when necessary, that seems like it became part of Woodward's character, etched into its memory.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Next time you walk past that old building on Main Street, could there be echoes of those backroom deals still buried in its walls? And just before we wrap up, you have to appreciate the sheer absurdity sometimes. The article mentions this one incident involving a runaway goat and a batch of moonshine.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, this goat got loose right into where someone was making moonshine and caused absolute chaos, trying to catch the goat without, ruining the entire batch or attracting attention.
It almost blew the whole operation. A goat.
Exactly. It just goes to show it wasn't all smooth sailing and clever plans. Sometimes it was just pure, chaotic, rural mishap defining the era. A runaway goat could be as big a threat as a prohibition agent.
Thank you for listening to the Woodward Shoutouts Deep Dive Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to uncover more of Woodward's hidden history, make sure to subscribe at woodwardshoutouts.com. Every week, we bring you stories that reveal the layers of our hometown past, present, and everything in between.